Right, guys, the I Ching is really difficult to put in context sometimes history. So I wrote this book, The Ultimate I Ching, yeah? And it's an illustrated step-by-step guide to the Book of Changes. Now, what I'm going to do to here is going to read you a section from it, which I know can be a bit boring, but stick with it. And it's the timeline section. And I won't read it all, I just give you the basic points. And this helps you understand just exactly where the I Ching fits into world history. So get yourself a copy of that and it'll explain all of it. So 10,000 BC. China is in a Neolithic period, Stone Age period. 4000 BC, the first cities and towns start to bloom. 3500 BC, the invention of the wheel out in Asia and the carrying of loads. So that's 3500 BC. 3000 BC, Stonehenge starts, and we start to see Longshan black pottery culture in China. 2700 roughly BC, the Yellow Emperor is said to have been born, a semi-legendary figure, and he starts to form Chinese society. 2600 BC, the Saracen stones of Stonehenge are raised. 2500 BC, the Great Pyramid of Giza is built. 2500 is a mythical deity is said to have created the 8 trigrams. So you can see that China goes on for a long way before we even start to get to the trigrams or anything like that. So there's lots of Chinese culture before the I Ching. Now 2100 BC, an early version of the I Ching is known, and it's only fragments of it remain. 2000 BC, spirit talkers start burning animal bones and answer divine questions from the ancestors. So 1600 BC, the Shang dynasty are founded, and some divination start to use the I Ching tradition. 1200 BC, the Iron Age develops in Iraq and spreads to other parts of the world. So before this point, there's not even iron, no iron coins or anything like that. They're just bits of the I Ching and the stalks, how they use them. That's probably why you don't get coins. The stalks are the oldest, because you don't even have iron yet. Then 1100 BC, you get the birth of King Wen. Now King Wen basically really starts to change the I Ching and starts to move it around. Then 1000 BC, roughly, we get the fall of the Shang dynasty. And in 1042 BC, basically King Wen starts to change a lot of the stuff. And the Wen family have a real big change about what's going on in the I Ching itself. They start to revolutionize the I Ching. 776 BC, the first Olympic Games are held. 571, the birth of Lao Tzu, the famous Tao Te Ching, the author of the Tao Te Ching. 551, Confucius is born, and we start to get Confucianism. 500 BC, the Greece is at war with Persia, and the Persian Wars, basically. Then you get 500 BC again, the Iron Age in China starts to develop. So even only up to this point, we start to just get iron and coins start to coming in, and the death of Confucius. Then we start to get 475 BC, the Warring States period in China. And then 400 BC, the rise of Buddhism around India. Then, okay, you don't need to know that. 202 BC, the Confucianism starts to expand with the 10 wings. And 200 BC, there is a version of the I Ching written on the Silk Manual. 85 BC, the link between Confucianism and the I Ching starts to grow. So that's actually over 200 years after Confucius, only the link starts to become. 44 BC, the assassination of Julius Caesar by Brutus and his companions. AD 0, the birth of Jesus Christ. Obviously, that is debated. AD 25, the birth of the Han Dynasty. 550 AD, the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. 618 AD, the Tang Dynasty starts, and then the 3-coin method of the I Ching starts. In the year 800-ish, Scandinavian travellers, raiders, Vikings start to harry Europe. And then in 900 AD, the fall of the Tang Dynasty. 1066, William the Conqueror invades Britain, and we get Anglo-French sort of in England. And then 1100, the First Crusade. Now in 1200, the China starts to become ruled by the Mongol Empire. 1347, the Black Death in Europe, killing up to 50% of the population. 1400s, we have the Italian Renaissance. The 1600s, European travellers start to colonise the Americas. You see, we don't have much on the I Ching, then it sort of falls out of fashion, but not much really happens with it. The American Revolution, 1775. The French Revolution, 1789. And then we get to 1882, and James Legge publishes the first English translation of the I Ching. In 1899, German missionary Richard Wilhelm travels to China and falls in love with Chinese culture. Richard Wilhelm starts to study and translate the I Ching, but by 1914 he has to stop because the war kicks off. Then in 1923, the publication of Wilhelm's German translation of the I Ching. Then we get World War II. Then in 1950, the Bollingen Foundation publishes the English translation by Kerry Barnes and the I Ching based on Richard Wilhelm's German version. Then in 1973, we get the discovery in the tomb of the silk version of the I Ching. Then in the year 2000, we get the explosion of the internet, websites, apps and everything. 2008, the Beijing Olympics open on an auspicious day. And in 2023, the Ultimate I Ching by Antony is published by Watkins. So we're looking at about 4,000 years roughly of history. That goes back to 10,000 BC, but not really much starts till after that. So that is roughly 4,000 years of history of the I Ching. So that is just to put it into context. That's a couple of pages I wrote and did some research on, so you have the context of where the I Ching is and why there's no coins there, why we use storks and not that, and how it all came about. Get yourself a copy and enjoy.